Hello, welcome back to the HCCTV Student Lounge. This is a show done by HCC students for HCC students to give your opinions in news, entertainment, and what's going on in our school. Hi Carolina, so today we're talking about gaming. I think that's my favorite hobby so far. How are you?
Really? Hi, Kyle. Well, and we have a very special guest. So you'll remember him, guys. We're also joined today by Francisco, Josh, Eric, Chaz, and Andres. And we will also be joined by two guests, Christopher Khuong and Vincent Tran, who are here to talk about digital gaming and simulation. But first, let's move into our top 3 news or events of the week. First, we have the Building a Sense of Belonging Virtual Summit, a gathering of faculty, staff, and community partners centered on the sense of belonging and connectedness at HCC. We will provide opportunities for real conversations and develop action-oriented approaches to create more inclusive and equitable environments for the benefit of all Summit. And this event will be offered in April the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd. So you still have time. And we'll be featuring guest speakers from Baker Ripley and the JED Foundation, HCC faculty and staff, and panel discussion by HCC students and community advocates. We're gonna have the link over here so you can go ahead and register. Now, we also have set yourself up for future financial success and attend one of the HCC Financial Aids info sessions. So every month, the financial aid hosts through Zoom sessions, connecting with experts that will go over the ways you can pay for education. And you can also visit this link. And actually, I really recommend you guys to take advantage of this. I spoke to a financial coach, and he's actually giving me lots of tips for my personal budgeting and all of that. And it's free, so please do it. Have you ever taken any financial coach before, Kyle?
No, I actually didn't know this was a thing, but that's interesting because it's always good to take care of your finance. Otherwise, you're gonna end up owing a lot of money to the bank, which had happened to me. So it's important to do that.
Yes, and especially after COVID, after the winter freeze, it's very important to start saving after that so we can be prepared if something ever happens. You never know.
I think it's important too, Carolina. And one thing that I didn't know and I'm still learning is kind of how the credit works. And that's something that I should definitely had gotten help in the past so I could figure out how it works because I know we don't do like that in Brazil. So I didn't know that there's a score, that you gotta be careful how much you spend, you gotta pay it off right away, and there's like all those little tricks, things that you need to do in order to improve your credit. So it's always good to also have that in mind.
Yes, I bet you were also surprised, just like me. And I didn't want to open a credit. I didn't want to have a credit card because I didn't want to get in debt and all of that. And people told me that's the best way you can like start your credit, and then they will give you credits for a car or stuff like that. And I actually got my car because I had credit history. So yeah, that's good. Now, the highlight of most children 8th birthday is blowing out candles, but there is an 8-year gamer that went from piano player to a pro gaming. So Joseph Dean, he just signed a contract to be a professional gamer, and they gave him 33,000 from their headquarters of the Californian sports team. I don't know a lot of gaming, but it's a big deal, and you guys can even talk more about it. I know you love gaming. Everybody over here loves gaming. Now, let's begin our first topic, which makes way to a great discussion, gaming. So, in my case, I'm not a video gamer. I played some things like Mario Kart and those things, but I never liked it that much. So in the pandemic, what I started playing was board games. So last time I went to visit my sister in Indiana, I found a friend, and she loves board games, and she introduced me to so many board games. As soon as I got to Houston, I got them and I started playing with my friends, and it's a great way to spend time and be competitive, and it helps a lot. And Now, talking about video games, I know Andres wants has a great topic, and it's actually related to the news that I just told you about. So, Andres, what is it that you want to tell us about?
Thank you, Carolina. There is a perception that video games are bad for children. However, there are benefits to playing video games, especially strategy and pro-social games. Thanks to the research, we know now that playing games with parental guidance stimulates children's cognitive, social, fine motor, and emotional development. Video games improve spatial ability, which is the ability to visualize, rotate, transform, and manipulate objects. Video games improve persistence, hand-eye coordination, social benefits, manage emotions, stress reduction, and improves creativity. So you can see that it's a lot of benefits to play video games. Of course, everything with the supervision of the parents.
I know, Andres. I know, especially like you would think that video games are gonna affect you, but you never know. There are so many video games. If you choose the right one, it's gonna develop your creativity. And I have lots of friends that are creative. I'm a creative, but I'm more a drawer and you know all of other things. But Kayo, so what is role play?
So I would tell you, but one bit about what Andres just said. So Andres, this is very true, and I really believe in that. And by watching my brother and seeing how he learned things by playing video games, and also with me, look how smart I am, you know. And that's because I play a lot of video games. So, you know, we have a real experience here, real proof of that. So now let's talk about role play. Also, they call RP. So role play is when a player that's playing a video game, and usually it can be like a computer game, a PlayStation, or an Xbox. They got so much into the game that now they join servers where there's like real people doing real things in the game. So for example, this guy, he's called Sheriff Strafe, and he's a retired cop from real life, and now he acts like a cop in the video game. And it's funny because he literally acts like a cop. So he pulls over people because they were speeding, or he tried to look for illegal substance, and he can actually arrest them. And those people go to jail in the game, and they stay there like a day or two, and they cannot even play anymore. They need to wait until the time is over. And there's like gangs. So there's so much going on. And there's even a guy that his job at the game in GTA 5 was actually, he works at a fast food. And he quit because he was so annoyed, because he said it was start to become so like a real life job that he just decided to quit because it was too much for him. So you can see now that sometimes video games can literally feel like real life. And I think this is really interesting, especially now that we're living in this world, and the amount of streamers that had in the past now it outgrows so much, especially because of the pandemic. And we have someone who's gonna talk about that right now. So that's what I wanted to share. And one really quick thing, if you don't know the difference, I need to say that because there's like PlayStation, which is owned by Sony, there's Xbox, which is owned by Microsoft, and there's like computer games. Sometimes we have the same games available for both platforms, but mostly and usually most for computers. It's just easier to create the game, and actually we can even ask our guests to make sure if what I'm saying is true. I'm not sure, but all right, who's next?
Me, Kyle. So I'm not really a video game person, but I'm a big follower of the business world, and the video game industry is booming right now because of this pandemic. Not that the pandemic is a good thing, but people are at home and they have stuff they need to be doing, whether it's working out or playing video games or reading a book. Most people are choosing video games. Companies like Xbox and PlayStation or Sony or Microsoft are benefiting a bunch, with executives and developers able to work at home by themselves. It works in their favor, so they don't got to worry about going to the office as much. But to get into the industry of video games is probably a pretty smart idea now. It made about $56 billion last year, all the combined. Their stocks are going up highly, so I definitely recommend to anybody who wants to get into video game employment, do it now.
Okay, and talking about the other side of that same coin, I want to talk about over-commercialization in video games and how I think it's affecting the industry. I think one of the saddest things that's really been happening right now is, as always, when big corporations start having a handle on any certain markets, sometimes profit comes above all. And that's why sometimes some of the games we've been getting are coming out broken. They don't work. They don't give you as much as they should, or sometimes they straight up don't run on the consoles you get them. Kaya was talking about the PS4, the PlayStation, and the Xbox, the quote unquote last gen consoles being like the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And there was a game, Cyberpunk 2077, that was originally slated to release on these consoles. And when it came out, because they had moved so much of the stuff for the new generation, it literally just didn't run. I've had friends who bought the game who were only able to play it about like 2 hours before it literally just wouldn't work on their consoles anymore. And as always, I think as consumers, we need to be, wary about this and make sure that, hey, if we're going to spend, because video games are expensive these days, most AAA titles are ranging from $60 to $70, not even including any of the DLC or the other stuff you're spending, you're like buying for them. So there's already a lot to do there. So I just think we need to be more wary and make sure that we're actually getting like a finished product instead of some of the stuff some of the companies are putting out.
Yeah, Chaz. So I actually bought Cyberpunk, but I bought it on PC, so I didn't have nearly as many problems as most people did. So I had a lot of fun. So shout out to them for at least making some of the versions okay. But I wanted to talk about streaming, so video game streaming in particular. So there's sites like Twitch and like Facebook streaming, and there was Mixer, but we don't talk about that anymore. And basically what it is a lot like we are now. It's a person who plays video games professionally. They sit in front of their computer, in front of their webcam, and play a game, and then stream that game and themselves playing it to one of these streaming websites. And then they have like a chat of people that are like watching with them, and like they can interact and they can like send messages and stuff and like make donations and all that. It's like a really huge industry, and it started getting really big like 2-3 years ago, as when it started getting like huge. And then so a lot of advancements in like streaming and like all these things started coming about. And then it's interesting that like when the pandemic started, there was a lot of like streaming equipment and like gaming specific equipment that was being sold out and being out of stock everywhere, because new people needed to essentially do that. So it was kind of like streaming was preparing the market for the pandemic, at least when it comes to video over the internet. So I thought that was cool. And yeah, streaming, if you if you like podcasts and stuff, it's kind of like a podcast, but it's just like someone hanging out talking to their fans. And if you like watching video games, it can be particularly interesting to see someone who's usually pretty good at the game.
In recent years, when gaming has started to become more and more accessible to some people, you have to think of the people who aren't able to easily access games. And that's where Microsoft came in with their Xbox Adaptive Controller, which is developed in partnership with organizations around the world. For the Cerebral Palsy Foundation, the Craig Hospital Special Effect, Warfighter Engage. And it's a controller designed with 2 big buttons in mind that can be reprogrammed to do anything you want on the controller, but it also has so many ports available on the top that it could connect to any device to help with any sort of issue or disability that you might have. And it made waves in the industry, and it definitely led to more conversations of how can we make games more accessible to more people. So you start seeing games that give you options to make them easier if you're younger or you have issues like seeing in dark places. Colorblind options are becoming more common. And I think it's something that the industry really needs, and I'm glad to see that it's getting the support that it deserves.
Wow, Josh, that's fascinating. Yeah, everything that makes most of the people use these games and all of these new platforms, it's a like kudos to them. And now that we've heard from you guys, let's move into our week's guest. Why don't you introduce us to them, Kyle?
Sure, I'll introduce one at a time because today we have 2, and I love when this happens because we get to know and learn so much more. So first I have Khuong, and he's a program coordinator for digital gaming and simulation at HCC. So first of all, how are you today?
Doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm great too. Thanks so much for being here. And this is a really exciting topic, I think, for all the students here, but not Carolina because she doesn't like video games, but everybody else, it's really exciting. So let's get into it. So first of all, I wanted to tell me a little bit about video games and like how is the process of creating one?
So typically in our industry, there are 4 different phases, and it's pretty similar to English composition classes that you guys may have experienced in high school or in college. So we have the typical brainstorming phase, which is called the pre-production, and that's where, depending on the size of the company, whether it's small or medium or large, they get together, they create a concept and a design. Sometimes they'll have a prototype ready and they will pitch this design to a publisher hoping for financial gains or benefits. And so using that money to fund employees and purchase licensing for software and hardware itself, that comes with those benefits. And then eventually you move on to the production stage where we start diving more into the creation of art assets, the programming scripts. We also talk about, well, we also include things like the actual script writing, which are geared more towards writers and creative directors and developers. Eventually, by the third phase, this is the typically the longest phase, which is the game testing phase. Usually we call this quality assurance. And usually the game is already done prior to this. This is where we really adjust a lot of the issues that we were experiencing in both the pre-production and the production stages. And once we knock out enough of the issues with aesthetics, the issues with design, balancing, and of course the technical issues, and there's never truly a bug-free game. There's always going to be something that you're going to find. We'll call them Easter eggs for the most part. And eventually, once we are happy with the product enough to a point where we're ready to release the game, we hit the post-production phase. This is where we focus on selling the game and releasing it on the market. And eventually we talk about how to improve on the next project. As you all are all pretty much aware, the gaming industry is still in its infancy. We are still experiencing a lot of new things every day. And so our industry always evolves into something more progressive.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I was gonna ask you, so what would be your favorite phase of this whole process? Would it be when you get to try the game?
In So the favorite part in game development or
I
playing
mean,
games in general.
your in the point of view, like when creating a game, what's your favorite part of it? Would be playing the game or something else?
Um, it's when you get to see other players smile or we get really competitive over something as small. Where we've never really suspected someone would get competitive over. They'll find things that we would never sought out. Sometimes whenever, in a sense, if they're happy, we're happy, And I think at some point I released a game to the public for testing, and there was there was a kid who sticked around to play one of our buggiest builds to just defeat the bug for an hour. And so we ended up taking a screenshot of him, and it's almost like a weird trophy that doesn't really exist. And he was just there, just smiling the whole time, just happy that he defeated it himself. So, especially at 4 frame rates per second.
Oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. Um, so you did mention that you gotta know a little bit of like writing, for example, or you gotta know art. So what type of subjects you actually need to know in order to create a game? Because there's also coding, right? Math. There's a lot of stuff that we don't think about when you talk about games. Some people just think you just sit down in front of something, you just do like this with the controller, and boom, the game it's ready. And it's not like that, right?
The common misconception of video games is that anybody can get into the gaming industry, and I would like to say you can. Anybody can get into the gaming industry if you work hard enough, and if you work smart enough. And we have a lot of disciplines, from art to programming to design to music to and all of these are they come from they require a multitude of skills. So if you're a programmer, what I definitely do recommend is keeping up with math and logic, keeping up with computer science, learning on your own as well, and really challenging yourselves. If you're an artist and you really want to dive into either 2D or 3D, there is, and this goes for everyone actually, anybody can pick up an engine right now. Anyone can pick up all the tool sets that you need to build the game. Um, and what a lot of developers are looking for are people who are passionate about pushing a lot of their work forward. And you'll see someone who will barely get a point across, and then you'll see someone else who will add in another 30%. And there's a lot of that in our industry. Um,
I think that works with pretty much all industries. You always gotta work hard no matter what, and believe and be passionate. I think especially when it comes to like filmmaking, and I think those creative things they require that extra step. You cannot just sit and do things. You gotta actually think about. So I think that's pretty interesting. One last question before we move into our next guest. I just want to ask you, we didn't mention the benefits of video game, but I want to hear from you or your opinion. What do you think are the benefits and what are the downsides of video game?
The benefits of a video of pretty much any game varies. Everyone has a preference when it comes to our field. For the most part, it is regarded as a luxury. It's entertainment. And we have been pushing for not just entertainment, but also simulations. So we can push things like, oh, well, you can perform surgeries in the virtual reality world as opposed to diving on an actual, let's say, test subject, and at a much more affordable price. And with games, there's, because it's evolving ever so frequently, there's new ways of let's say, exploring new worlds, exploring new ways to engage the players and interact with have the players interact with your game. And it's not always going to be, let's say, for example, most PC gamers. I'm looking at like 90% of you who are used to the WASD, the WASD keys, and the mouse being able to control around. Like 20, 30 years ago, that was not a thing. And over time, the design changed. And from that point, we've gotten more immersive. We played on players' convenience and accessibilities. We've been more and more in tune and empathetic towards the players' needs. We learned a lot about the population or the majority of the people. Now, and that's a huge plus, and like being able to see colorblind the first time I think I experienced, and I'm not colorblind. I'm The first time I experienced colorblind mode, it made things pop out more, and that was over like 12, 13 years ago. We learned that we can push these technologies to its limits, if not further over. Um, and and there's a lot of negatives too. I can talk for days about how probably like any enjoyable things can become a very unhealthy habit. And I can say a few words, and normally a lot of the community will go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for instance, I recently banned this game called League of Legends from my household. And it's mostly because when you take a form of entertainment, whatever it may be, over its let's say unnecessary time limit, and you start seeing your other performances fail, whether it's school, whether it's your work performance, and that can seriously affect how you grow as a person outside of a game. And no disrespect to, like, let's say someone who plays game for 12 hours a day professionally. It's just, it depends on, let's say, your goals as a person, and prefer personal and professional development. And so it can be for anyone and everyone, or I would suggest, it depends on how far you're willing to push it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Actually, I know people, including close friends, that have this issue that just can't stop playing and start to be something that is impacting their professional life. The relationship with their partner at home start to become complicated. So there's ways it's all about balance, as you said. You can play, but you don't need to be doing that the whole time. There's a real world outside that you also need to enjoy. Otherwise, you're just gonna be playing your whole life, and once you get old, you're gonna be like, oh my God, look what I missed. So those are really good points. Well, I think that's it for your part of the interview. Thanks so much for being here, and now we're gonna move on. So we have a person here today that you guys may know. It's Vincent Trent. He used to be part of the HCCTV team here at the Student Lounge, but he was tired of us and he decided to leave us. But apparently he's back just for today's shows. So, and one thing too, he is here because he's a student he's a game design student, right? So how are you, Vincent?
Hey Kyle, thanks for having me back on the show. You can't have a video game related show without me.
You are right. We could not do that without you. So I'm glad you're here. So I want to ask you, since you made part of the program as a student, I want to hear your opinion, and also I would like to know, why do you like playing video games?
All right, so everyone has a different reason for liking video games, but the most important reason I have to say is because it's fun, of course, right? Why play it if it's not fun? So for me, I like to play video games because it's a form of escapism, sort of like watching a movie, except instead of watching a movie, you're playing as the main character. My favorite type of video games are games like Final Fantasy or The Witcher, RPG games, role-playing games. Playing in real life, you can't be, a soldier in space or a silent protagonist going on a killing spree, because murder is bad, but you can do that in video games. But I'm not saying you should go do that. But yeah, that's why I like playing video games, is because you can do things you can't do in real life, and yeah, escapism.
Perfect. So I know you like to play video games, but what's the reason why you actually want to learn how to make them? Because you could just stay home and play video games, but you decided to make them. And why is that?
All right. So my dream is to make a video games because I want to create worlds where people can escape to, frolic and have fun, create their own stories in my world. I always wanted to make movies at first. I was a media arts student, but I changed my major to video games because I want to make worlds people can create their own stories in. In a way, I want to produce my own video games, like directing your own movie, but helping people direct their own game.
Perfect. Well, Vincent, I think that's it. I wish you could stay more and talk more, and because I was like, because I feel like I'm talking to a cartoon here because you have this animation. I'm like, see you all moving like this, so cute. But anyways,
I'll be sure to find my way back here one way or another.
You're always welcome here, man. You know that. So whenever you want, just come participate. So guys, well, unfortunately, we don't have entertainment for today because we had a really long show, but we did learn a lot, and I hope you enjoyed the content because I love video games. Everybody here but Carolina likes video games. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stick to the end because we have the funny video or the meme of the week. I'll see you next week.
Also, don't forget to send us your opinion and send us topics that you would like to discuss. And just like Vincent, if you want to be a guest in our show, just contact us and we'll make sure to add you in. We'll see you next time on the Student Lounge.